Can I offer each of you the traditional Irish welcome, Céad Míle Fáilte, 100,000 welcomes to you, and a very special welcome in particular to those who are visiting Ireland, and in particular those who are visiting for the first time. You get to make a wish if you're coming for the first time, and we hope the wish will bring you back to us again. And I hope that you get this opportunity to enjoy our Irish hospitality, and at the same time, of course, those of you who are immersed in the world of crafts and who love the world of crafts, you love, as I do, anywhere I go in the world, seeing what the craftsmen and women of another country offer, because so much of who they are and what they are is spoken of through those crafts, things that are lovingly crafted. So I hope you'll see some of the crafts and heritage for which we are famous. As Laura said, I'm Patron of the Year of Craft 2011. I'm delighted to be. Delighted to have this opportunity to be part of this conference with your focus on craft conscious, reshaping global futures in the innovation age. I want to congratulate the Craft Council of Ireland for hosting this event in association with the World Crafts Council Europe, and I'm just very grateful that I get to be part of it. It's part of a fantastic calendar of events that have been planned by both the Craft Council of Ireland and the Craft Council, the Craft Northern Ireland, in this specially nominated Year of Craft. And for me, coming from Northern Ireland, from Belfast, I just love to see that synchronicity between the two, that working together. So I hope that this General Assembly, for all of you, that it'll be a time, of real dynamic inspiration, a time when you go away just burgeoning with fresh ideas. I'm just looking at that table in front of me. I don't even know, is it a table? Not sure. But whatever it is, it has just completely blown my mind about what tables can be like and what legs can be like. It's quite outstanding. And isn't that what crafts and the artistry brought to crafts does? Just opens our minds to other landscapes, other possibilities, so that we see beyond the narrowness of our own horizons through the eyes of the artist, who can take us to a completely different landscape. Perhaps one of the, I suppose, the least flattering things that can be said about someone is that they are good for neither use nor ornament. It used to be the worst thing my grandmother could say about anything, that it was neither use nor ornament. But within this gathering, of course, of phenomenal craftspeople and makers of objects that are both functional and decorative, there is no one to whom or of whom that could ever be said. Throughout all our history, throughout the history of humankind, people have been compelled, driven to make things, objects. And many of the craft industries that are represented here today are built on those long centuries old traditions and skills, lovingly, carefully passed on down through the generations, but then each generation in turn leaving its own imprint, taking that skill in its own direction, making its own mark. And that's also a very important thing. There is the fidelity to tradition, but there is also the freedom of the new artist, the freedom of the new craftsperson to leave their mark. The word, I know, if you use the word craft in Ireland, it can take you anywhere. I suppose from the magnificence of the Ardagh chalice and its sheer exquisite beauty, right the way through to the haunting loneliness, I suppose, of a small cottage up in Donegal, where a man or an elderly man or woman could be carding wool. I saw them there last year, carding wool that they will use on an ancient, rickety, old loom, as they have done for generations in a trade or a skill or a craft that is now passing. There was a time when in every cottage it would have been done. Now it is the rarity. And your conference, I suppose, takes us from the nostalgic past to the present, and through the present to plan for the future, the kind of future that the world of crafts can offer us. It's something remarkable about the world of crafts, it seems to me, is that in this moment when we face such difficult economic circumstances, and we know we are not alone in that in the world. There are many countries for whom difficult economic circumstances are the norm. Think particularly of developing countries. And I think particularly of those countries that I've been privileged to visit as president so often. It is the work of the individual craftsperson that offers whatever hope there is to a family of getting up off their knees and out of poverty. It is the woman sitting making baskets under a tree in some part of Africa. It is someone crafting little dolls or little beautiful little objects out of wood. These are the things close to home, local, using the tools, using the bits and pieces that are around, out of which to craft an economy, a life through art forms, through craft. I grew up, Laura mentioned briefly that I'm a maker of things. I grew up in a post-war home, post-Second World War, before you start counting, where clothes were, we didn't buy clothes from shops. Clothes were knitted. They were sewn. Curtains were made. Bedspreads were made. Cushion covers were made at home. Nothing was shop bought. Where much of the creative skill and artistic ingenuity of the women all around me, in particular, was to be found and frankly, not all was fully appreciated in very functional, utilitarian things to do with just everyday life in the home. When I came a few years ago, when we built my husband and I were happy and privileged to be able to build our own home a few years ago, I did what I was trained to do by my mother and my grandmother. I bought the material, I made all the bedspreads, I made all the curtains, I made all the cushions, and my kids thought I was completely bonkers. Just a different generation. The baton that had been handed on so carefully to me just dropped, clunked, stone dead, on the ground in the generation between me and my children. And it wasn't helped, of course, by my husband, who, when I brought all the material down into the living room to start the sewing, he looked at it and he said, "Excuse me, are you intending to climb that or sew it?" So this is the kind of I suppose it's the world that we now inhabit, isn't it? That the sweeping changes of modernity saw so many of the traditional skills and crafts diminish under the sheer welter and weight of access to easy, off the manufacturing line, manufactured goods. Though at the same time, of course, there was, to that surging interest in the decorative and applied arts, I suppose, freed to some extent from the demands of utilitarianism and the demands of utility, there was that opportunity to increase the artistry, the decoration, and the craft sector, of course, has become a really very important place where there is that bridge between the traditional and the contemporary, and they cohabit so very well together. That whole world has benefited from, I think very much benefited from, and indeed it's often again been the bridge between the tensions between the advances in technology, easy access to manufactured global products, a very important voice, not quite any longer thankfully in the wilderness, in the growing consciousness of ethical and environmental responsibility. And this is one of the great handles on modern life that is still exercised by the world of craft, bringing us back to a consciousness of using the earth's resources with much more integrity than we might otherwise do. And the hallmark of the craft industries is, of course, that quality is the first thing, that there is an investment of the self in the product, whatever it happens to be. There's an investment way above and an intensity of focus in what you bring to this item, whatever that item might be, whatever that thing might be. There's a giving of the self to it with a loving intensity, a careful intensity that we do not see in things that fire off the end of the production line. And that's a very important thing because, again, without ever unpacking it, these beautiful objects bring us back to the value of skill, first and foremost. Skill honed, learnt, patiently handed on. Something that you cannot just learn in a moment, but have to invest time in. So patience, care, passion, the passion for not giving up, the passion for staying with the thing until it is perfect. so perfect you're happy to hand it over. And then that notion of uniqueness, which is a very, very special part of the charism of craft. And in these, I suppose in these early days of the 21st century, we can already see that even as children of the era of mass consumerism and mass consumption, we are now once again revisiting the role of crafts in our contemporary narrative for a whole lot of reasons, not least because the economy of craft, the one person who does something beautifully and well that can sustain him or her and a family, is a very, very important economic unit to us right now. The link, of course, with heritage is undeniable. I know that it's showcased in one of the themes of your conference, examining culture, identity, nationality. I know that in all the places that we visited, and I'm sure you're the same wherever you visit, you want to bring something of the place to spark the memory, to keep the memory alive. You like to bring some souvenir back, and I always bring something that is homemade, home-crafted. Again, because it just speaks to me of something that a human being has invested a bit of their life in, has shared their life with us in the doing of it. And there is, I guess, no better place than Ireland to examine that link between culture, identity, nationality. We've a vast treasury of ancient and modern exemplars of long-standing tradition of exquisite craftswork, exquisite and wonderful craftsmen and women. The visitors who come from all over the world, if you were down in Trinity College this moment, there'll be a queue a mile long to see the Book of Kells. You'll go to the National Museum, the Tara brooch, the Ardagh chalice. I don't even want to start listing them, because once you start, you leave out so many wonderful things. Just a wonderful store of magnificently crafted objects. And in and through these things, so many of them, of course, very ancient, so many of them found almost by chance, but they reveal to us in a way that surprises us, but also, I think, reassures us. They reveal something of the character of the people and their times. From centuries back, we begin to understand what it was that drove these people, what was their character, what kind of things were aesthetically pleasing to them. And it gives us clues because, of course, for many of us, that past, that far past, is veiled in mystery. But somehow, through the work of craft, it's revealed to us, or at least partially revealed to us. And that's one of the lovely things that you, who are contemporary craft artists, have to offer as well. You speak about our values, our principles, our charism in our time. You speak to us, of course, in our time, but in time to come, because your work has an enduring value for the most part, enduring long before, long after many other things that are made in other ways. You'll speak to other generations about the times that we lived through and what brought us through those times. There's something also, I think, one of the things that always occurs to me when I'm looking at craftsmen and women abroad, sometimes in very poor circumstances, sometimes not, but that whatever, even if we're talking about a local patrimony, a local heritage, so that you look at something and you know instantly that it is Chinese, or you know instantly that it's Japanese, or clearly it's come from Lesotho, or clearly it has come from Zanzibar. Yet, for all that it has its own particular imprint, geographic, national, cultural imprint, it also, of course, is part of our own vast global patrimony. It says something about the common human family. And that's also a very important part of the world of craft. That to see something beautifully crafted, seeing them for example, at the expo in China, in Shanghai, if any of you were lucky enough to get to it, as I was, and to see the beautiful, if any of you got to see this beautiful coach from 2500 BC, and there it is, still magnificent, and to realise just in looking at it, the wonder of the work that went into it, fully appreciated now in this century, but to have that world opened up to us just through one small, lovingly crafted piece, very complicated piece, but something that speaks to us about a way of living, a way of looking at the world, a way of looking at life and skill and talent and the investment of self. I just find that a very moving experience, not because, and of course the Chinese are around so proud of it, but I also felt very, very proud of the hands that made that work. Today, of course, Irish crafts are primarily micro businesses. They are typically highly labour intensive. I think it's the same the world over. They form such an important part of our rural economies, our local economies, not just rural, but local economies, but in particular our rural economies. We reckon there are, about almost 6,000 people employed in that sector. Contributes hugely, hugely to tourism. You couldn't even begin to figure out the investment that is made of the human person through our craftsmen and women in the welcome that we give to tourists. It's part and parcel of it. We know, of course, that Irish glass, pottery, textiles are, and have for centuries, for a very, very long time, they've been renowned around the world. They first carved that global reputation for excellence on a pretty competitive world stage, of course. But more latterly, we're so proud to see the way in which there has been this wonderful explosion of many, many new creative art forms, stretching old forms in different ways, creating new forms. And we just love to see the confidence as well as the skill that is in our young people, how much joy they have in making their life's vocation, the world of craft. We can see, I think, just as in the past the skill of a craft was so carefully handed on from one generation to the next, we now see the value of lengthening and widening and deepening the wells of wisdom from which we draw inspiration for our crafts, but also see too how important it is, to go back to that first thing that I mentioned, to let the young generation now also dig their own wells that another generation will draw from, not to have them hidebound by tradition, respectful of it, yes, but not paralysed by it. And I know that this conference brings the very best of Irish, European, world craft sectors together so that we can benefit from each one of you. Every one of you brings a piece of a jigsaw puzzle to this conference. It's your size, it's your shape, it's unique to you. And I hope that when all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are on the table, I don't necessarily hope that they'll all, fit neatly together, but hopefully that when they are put on the table, that you'll be able to see the kind of world beyond this moment's horizon that we might get to in the world of crafts. This is so often small scale, niche markets. A lonely place to inhabit, I imagine, at times for craftsmen and women. Because you have to be all things, not just the artist, you have to be your own salesperson, your own accountant, your own employee as well as employer. You have to be the person who does everything. That can be a very difficult and tense and very responsible and lonely place to be in. And so I hope that in this room, you're also able to give each other support. There's a lovely old Irish expression that says, Ní neart go curla céla. That's in the Irish language, and it really means that our strength only reveals itself when we work together. We learn new things about our own competency when we work with other people, and that, I hope, is what will happen here in and through the work of this conference, so that the potential of this great industry, nationally, internationally, will really unleash itself in the world at this moment. A very special and a very important moment. So we're delighted to be host to this gathering of craftspeople. We're very, very grateful that you are here, grateful that you make time, because again, every moment taken away from the micro industry is time, in a way, lost to the world of craft. But I hope that you think this time here will be well invested in your future and the world of crafts. For craftsmen and women, for artisans everywhere, I'm very, very grateful to you for the passion you have and for making this your vocation, and in particular for giving this time to trying to generate a dynamic that takes us to the next good steps, trying to find the roadmap to the next right move, right steps for this industry. Gura míle maith agaibh, thank you so much. Enjoy.